What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another BTD gaming video, and it's that time of season again. The ban list is hopefully upon us. You know, I was afraid that I wasn't going to get this video out in time, but the ban list hasn't been released yet. Now, last time we did a ban list prediction, the ban list came out literally the next day. So, I don't know, maybe we'll luck out this time. Part of me doubts it, but we'll see. No, we don't know if the ban list is going to come out right before or right after the YCS in Niagara. You know, it's happened before, ban list coming out right before big events, so that wouldn't shock me, but we'll see. Either way, we're going to make a prediction on not just the cards we think are going to be banned, but cards that are going to be limited, unlimited, semi-limited, all of that. Now, one quick thing to remember: when I make these ban list predictions, I don't do it based off of what I personally want to be banned. I do it based off of what I think is going to be banned, based on the current meta and all of that stuff. So, and just based on what the community is saying, and based on just what would be good for the game. Again, this isn't necessarily what I want to be banned or unbanned or limited. It's what I think Konami is going to do. So keep that in mind as we go through these cards. There's some that are, you know, pretty much slam dunks, and there's some where I kind of took a little bit of a risk to see, you know, there's a chance that these cards can be banned or unbanned or whatever it may be. So let's go ahead and take a look. So, first things first, we're going to look at the cards that I believe are going to be banned. And the very first one we have here should come to no surprise to anyone, and that is Mystic Mine. Now, Mystic Mine has a very, very complex history. You know, this card has been around for quite a bit now, and has always been the center of controversy, at least in the TCG. For some further context, Mystic Mine is banned in the OCG and is also banned in Master Duel. So the thing about Mystic Mine is, it's not like this card has ever been bad and just started being really good. This card was always good, but I guess in a lot of the top decks of those formats, this card wasn't a part of them. You know, a couple years ago, there were Mystic Mine decks doing well at events, but not like it is right now. And one thing that needs to be remembered too is that, you know, maybe the pandemic had something to do with it, with there not being paper play, so people's attitudes towards Mystic Mine might be a little different now than they were then. Alright, but the fact of the matter is, the reality here is that if we look at Mystic Mine recently, not only has it been topping a handful of the top events over and over and over again for the last couple months or so, it's also winning these events. Just take a look at the latest European National Championship. A Mystic Mine Burn deck won the whole thing. And also, a Mystic Mine deck with an Altergeist engine in it came in top 4, I think. So it's not like, you know, a Mystic Mine decks are sneaking in at like top 32 because people weren't prepared for them. No, people are so unprepared for this deck that this deck is actually winning events, and most of the time it's because of just a pure meta call. You know, before this, at the YCS in Hartford, I believe that the Sky Striker, of all things, with Mystic Mine in it, won that event. So the decks that are winning events, this card is at the forefront of those decks. And I think for that reason, we're finally going to see this card go. For a while, people have been begging for this card to be banned in the TCG, but I think part of that was only because, yeah, it's the annoying card. No, now it's a legitimate meta threat. And you have to think of it from Konami's perspective as well. We thought we were going to be entering in, some said, Tier 0 format with Sprite and Tearlament. Now, those decks, while good, and they perform pretty well, Konami can't be thrilled with the fact that those decks aren't winning these events, that these new decks that just came out in the TCG, but a card like Mystic Mine is. So you have to look at it from that perspective too, and also from a viewership perspective, from Konami broadcasting these YCSs. When you get into the final match or the final rounds, no one wants to sit there and watch activate Mystic Mine, pass, 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 pass. No one likes to watch that. So Konami has a ton of incentive to ban this card from not only a business standpoint, but from a competitive standpoint too. And I think banning this card is a win-win for the community, for Konami, and for the health of the game as a whole. This card's always been unfun. This card's always been pretty toxic. But now this card is unfun, toxic, and it's winning big events. Not just topping, but winning. It's time for Mystic Mine to go. You can spend hours talking about this card, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter if people weren't prepared for it or not. I think this card's time has passed. Moving on to the next one, another one that shouldn't come that big of a surprise here, Artifact Scythe. Now, a lot of people were a little upset that this card wasn't hit on the last ban list, and I can tell you exactly why, and it is called the Albaz Strike Structure Deck. I believe this card was in that structure deck, it was in product, so before Konami hits this card, they wanted to sell that product first, alright, and then they're going to ban this. It's a very typical Konami business strategy, where a lot of times where you see some of these cards get reprinted, you can almost say, okay, maybe it's going to get hit soon. Now that they sold the structure decks they wanted to sell, alright, they can't make any more money off of this card. It's time for Scythe to get hit, and the game will be better for it. Now, you know, the Anaconda Phoenix Enforcer line isn't a part of the game anymore, which makes the Scythe lock not as consistent, but it's probably just better for the game that this card gets banned, it's gone, and it's not an option. And again, Konami can't really make any money off of it anymore. And that leads into the next card for similar reasons, and some people might be surprised by this. Called by the Grave. Now, here's the thing with Called by the Grave. You have to understand that hand traps are a necessary evil in Yu-Gi-Oh! Nowadays. And Called by the Grave, especially as a Saki one of stopping those hand traps, so now your opponent can go into full combo, it's so overpowered. But that's not why Konami is going to ban this. See, just like how with Scythe, Called by the Grave was recently in the structure deck, so they could make more money off of Called by, but there's a card being released in a almost released in a future product in a couple weeks in the new Megatins, and that's going to be Crossout Designator is going to be printed again, and I think it's no coincidence. You see, Crossout Designator does essentially similar things to what Called by the Grave does, but Crossout Designator is significantly worse than Called by the Grave, because in order for Crossout Designator to be live, not only does your opponent need to use one of those cards, but you need to have that same exact card in your deck as well in order to use Crossout Designator. Called by the Grave, you don't need to do that, which means Called by the Grave is so much better, plus it banishes, and people would much rather run the one of Called by the Grave, the Saki one of Called by the Grave, than run 3 Crossout Designator, and the results kind of prove that. So I think Konami is going to ban Called by the Grave, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily, but it's not going to be because of the card's design or because it's like an obnoxious card, but I think it's going to, so that they can really push Crossout Designator to be the card of choice. And so they tried to do this last year in the last Megatin when Crossout Designator was first released. You know, they thought that a lot of people thought that Crossout Designator was going to change the meta. It didn't really. People were still using Called by over Crossout Designator. So in this year's Megatin, Konami can profit off of Crossout Designator again, and even more so this time because people won't have Called by the Grave to fall back on. I think banning Called by the Grave is purely a business choice by Konami, and Konami is known to make ban lists based off of business decisions and not necessarily game decisions. So I think that Called by the Grave is going to be banned on the next list. And the last card we have here, Crystron Halqifibrax, very similar reason for Called by the Grave. This is a good example of Konami having their cake and eating it too. You see, on the last ban list, I believe Halqifibrax was being reprinted in Ghosts from the Past, I think. So they were able to make some money off of Halqifibrax and Ghosts from the Past. But they also said, yeah, see, we hit Halqifibrax. We brought back, took down the 1. Even though people were only mainly using Halq as 1 anyway. Right? So I think now that, again, they made their money off of Halqifibrax and Ghosts from the Past, they're going to ban it. It's been a long time coming. You know, we've been having discussions of banning Halqifibrax and Mystic Mines specifically for the last, like, 2 years now. So I think they're finally going to do it now that it's been reprinted. There's no more money to be made off of this card anymore. So Halqifibrax is going to be banned. Alright, now, for the limited list, and this is what I love limits and stuff like that. Here's what's going to happen with limited. First things first, E-Telly is going to go back down to 1. It was at 1, then they put it to 2, then they put it to 3. I think it's too good at 3. With how some of these engines run, E-Telly is just a crazy card. So I think Emergency Teleport is going to go down to 1. Same thing with Super Polymerization. This is a weird one. I could definitely see this not being touched at all. But Super Poly is a crazy card. And being able to Super Poly multiple times in one game, because you have 3 of them, is nuts. Especially with a lot of the good fusion decks that are out now. I think Super Polymerization needs to be brought down to 1. I was even debating on whether or not I think this card will be banned. I don't think they're going to ban it because they still want to push these fusion strategies, but I do think Super Poly will be brought down to 1. The next card, Anti-Spell Fragrance. This will also be brought down to 1. Again, this is Konami's way of addressing some of these floodgates. I think Anti-Spell Fragrance is going to be another one. You know, some people might prefer different ones be hit, but I think it's going to be Spell Fragrance this time. And for these next 2, see, Konami's been doing these things, these last couple ban lists, where they're taking formerly broken cards from past formats and slowly bringing them back because they realize, oh, these cards aren't as crazy anymore. So one that's kind of a long shot here is Heavy Storm. So Harpy's Feather Duster is limited to 1. I think they can bring Heavy Storm to 1, and, you know, you essentially have a worse Harpy's Feather Duster. I don't want to say worse, but you can still gain advantage of destroying certain spell traps of your own. But 1 Heavy Storm, I don't know how much of a meta impact this is going to make. I think they can bring Heavy Storm back to 1, and everything will be fine. Same thing with Trap Dust Shoot. You know, yeah, returning a card back to your opponent's deck is very good, but, like, are people gonna run this at 1 to maybe draw in their hand? I don't know. I don't think people will. I don't think it makes as big of an impact as people think it is, especially because there's just so many searchers in the game that can get the cards you need anyway. So I think Trap Dust Shoot can come back to 1. And last but not least, we have, it pains me to say, Totally Awesome, I think, is going to go to 1. It's at 3 now, I believe, and it's just so good, especially with Sprite. I think limiting this card to 1 is probably for the best, and I think it's going to happen on this ban list. Next, we have these semi-limits. Now, the semi-limited list has been around for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, for Destiny Hero Malicious specifically, and reason number 2 is to slowly implement cards back into the game, just to make sure that they're not too crazy, to see if they can go to 3. Cards that are going to go to 2 are all these limited cards that were limited last ban list. Yalagarasu, I think, will go to 2. Again, I think all these cards can go to 3, but just based on what Konami has done with the limited list so far, I think these cards are going to go to 2 first. Yalagarasu is going to be semi-limited. Monkey Board is going to go to 2, and Time Seal is going to go to 2. One card I think that should go to 2 that's been going to 2 for a while, Beatrice, I think will go to 2 as well. I know a lot of people will be happy about that. And the Unlimits. Now, before I get to Unlimits, hear me out. Hear me out. Yes, I know. I'm drinking the Max C Kool-Aid. But this goes back to the Crossout Designator thing. Crossout Designator is so good in the OCG and even in Master Duel to a certain extent because of Max C specifically. I don't know. If Konami wants to really blow this sucker up, Max C is the card to do it. Let me put it this way. If it means Mystic Mine gets banned, if Mystic Mine getting banned means that Max C gets unlimited, gets unbanned, I'll take that trade 10 times out of 10. Alright, because there's things you can there's things you can do to counter Max C. It's not impossible to counter Max C. I think this card can come back to 3. Yes, Max C is one of the most, if not the most powerful card ever made in Yu-Gi-Oh! But again, OCG has it, Master Duel has it, and I don't think it's as obnoxious as other people say. Yes, it's very good. It's banned for a reason. Alright, it's borderline broken, but I think this card can check combo decks a very similar way that Call by the Grave does. And you can't, this is just like Call by the Grave. This is one of those cards you can only have banned or at 3. You can't bring this card to 1 because that's too sacky for a card of this power level. I think Max C comes back. It's going to make for some great content and great debate, but I don't know. I have a feeling this time. That was kind of like my big one. The next one, a true Draco fighter, I think can come back to 3 and not be a problem. Pod Desires is actually really funny. It can come back to 3, but I think people are going to run it at 2 anyway. Like, I don't know. Like, there's always been a big debate on what the proper ratio for Pod Desires is. Like, at least now, because it's at 2, it's like, oh, I have to play it at 2. But, like, if it's at 3, you can't really justify playing it only at 2. But whatever, I think Pod Desires comes back to 3. Fusion Destiny comes back to 3 because it can. Red Eyes Fusion is at 3, so Fusion Destiny can be at 3 as well. You know, the DPE engine, except for in Heroes, is basically dead anyway, so I think Fusion Destiny can come back to 3. And another one, again, Konami has been unlimiting old broken cards. Last ban list, they unlimited Raigeki. Was that last ban list? Or maybe it was 2 ban lists ago. They brought Raigeki to 3. Dark Holes at 3. I think the next one of those sort of Duel Monsters cards, those DM cards that can come back to 3, is Monster Reborn. It's essentially an extender. People barely use it now. And if it comes back to 3, I don't know if people are going to use it that much at 3. Maybe as a side option, but I think Monster Reborn can come back to 3. So, those are my predictions. We'll see if any of these are right. I know some of them were kind of out of left field and kind of big swings, but you can explain why I picked some of these. So, that's just what I think. Hopefully this ban list comes out soon, and we'll see what it does to the meta as a whole. So yeah, this was my ban list prediction, and I'll see you at the ban list reaction. Have a good one.